The more distinguished speakers that we have at Fluidity, definitely the best dressed I've seen so far, at least. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Look, thank you for having me, and I want to give a lot of props to Fluidity for putting this together. We're excited that the blockchain businesses and distributed ledger technology businesses are thriving here in New York, and we're happy that Fluidity put this together to show what's going on and to show off all the stuff that we have going on in New York State.
And to that point, I think you just had a conversation on stage. You got a chance to talk a little bit about what New York is doing in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space, and then had a conversation that was narrated, I believe, by Pat Baraducci with Caitlin Long, who I think might take perhaps a little bit of a different approach with Wyoming. Could you talk a little bit about how that conversation went with Caitlin? What were some of the maybe high-level points there between the differences with New York and Wyoming?
Look, in New York we go high, other places go low. She tried to diss New York when she came here. But in all honesty, it was great to see what's going on in Wyoming. And with Caitlin, we have a lot of respect for her, and a lot of respect for what's going on in Wyoming. But New York is not Wyoming. New York is the financial capital of the world, but we're not guaranteed to be that. Also, with this technology, it disrupted and is disrupting the financial markets and the financial industry in New York. But how do we make sure that we lead in blockchain in the world in New York? How do we make sure we lead in FinTech in New York? One of the things that's very important is that we have to balance a number of things. We have to protect consumers, we have to protect investors. We also have to make sure that we have an environment that's thriving for blockchain-related companies to be able to thrive in New York. And how do we make that balance? How do we do that? And it's a challenge. One of the things that we're very proud to do is that in New York State, we're the first state in the country to be able to pass a law to create a digital currency task force. And this is a group of people, superstars, all-stars, that'll help guide us with the policy and regulations around cryptocurrency, around digital currency, around blockchain to make sure that we get it right.
As somebody who works in crypto full-time at Fluidity and also has the kind of YouTube content, podcast on the side, and basically I live in the cryptocurrency world, it's really difficult to stay, I would say, up to date and educated on what's happening in the space. What does New York State do to kind of keep a pulse on what's happening? Because from somebody who's come from myself, the traditional tech industry, into the blockchain world, things move so quickly here. How do you guys stay just abreast on all the latest happening?
Look, it's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for all of us. So we have to make sure that, in this space, what's interesting is that, to make sure that you're on top of everything, you can't read or watch traditional media, right? You have to watch the blogs, you have to watch what's going on in different companies, you have to watch different kinds of industrial publications, because this stuff is happening so fast. But it's important to stay on top of it. One thing I was telling folks is that 4 years in this space is like 40 years somewhere else. So, but what's a great thing is that it's humbling too, because you don't know everything, and there's so much that's going on. That's why it's important for New York to watch what's going on, not only in Wyoming, but what's going on in Texas, what's going on in Latvia, what's going on in Uganda, what's going on around the world, what's going on in Asia, because all this stuff is connected. Another thing that's a challenge too is that, like I said, we want to make sure that New York stays premier in this industry. But when it comes to technology that disrupts everything, how do you do that? That's a challenge, and it's challenging every industry. But we have to make sure that we get it right here.
Yeah, I have a lot of, I think there's maybe a lot of grief that sometimes gets given to certain regulatory bodies, but I think that just in the blockchain and cryptocurrency world, it has changed things so quickly that I can't imagine the position that it puts someone like yourself and your team in, and just having to kind of quickly adjust as to maybe not deter innovation, but at the same point in time still try to protect individuals, because there's a pretty tough dilemma there.
One thing I didn't say on stage was that what's great is in every industry you have bad actors, right? You have bad actors in every industry. And I think it's good when people, when industries, when certain companies get outed, get caught, when Ponzi schemes get caught in this, because what happens is that we need to purge the bad ones out. But what's very important is that good companies and good actors need to step up. And as I said on stage, we have to make sure that education is very important. right? Acknowledgement is very important. That the fact that you guys are doing this is something that's important, because I believe in New York State, in New York City, this industry is operating in the shadows. And what happens is that then there's going to be a certain kind of relationship between this industry and lawmakers and regulators, and that's something that I'm trying to close that gap.
Well, I appreciate you coming to the Fluidity Summit as well as taking the time to speak with me. I think this type of conversation is really helpful and really illuminating. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a million. I'm happy to be here, and like I said, I'm excited that Fluidity is doing this. I learned a lot, and I'm going to try to stay here for a little bit to learn a little bit more.